Demand is the next concept that is being discussed in most basic and microeconomics. In fact, demand and supply together. Most textbooks like yours start off first by discussing demand. I mean, we've all heard, whether you've studied economics or not previously, we've all heard about the forces of demand and supply. But it is very important for us to treat this concept more formally. So demand really is about consumers. And so in economics we talk about the demand sector in the same language or in the same way that we talk about the consumer sector, because it is really about consumers demanding particular goods. So, and then demand on its own does not make the market, but the interaction between demand and supply, they determine prices. In fact, in many microeconomics textbooks previously, microeconomics was called the theory of price determination. So it is really the interaction between demand and supply that determine the price of various products in the market, and not only the price but also the equilibrium quantity at which those products should be supplied by the market. So a household's decision about what quantity of a particular product to demand depends on a number of factors. The first of those is the price of that product. That's how demand is determined. The price of that product, that's the first factor that modifies the behavior of consumers in terms of their demand for a particular product. But you cannot demand what you cannot afford. So this type of demand is not really like a political demand. When you sort of like demand services, demand electricity, demand housing. No. In economics, demand must not just be your willingness to consume a particular good or to purchase a particular good, but it is also your ability to afford that good. That brings us to our second factor that determines this concept of demand, and that is income. So the income that is available to an individual, if we're talking about individual demand, is together with the price. They collude together to determine what level of what quantity of a particular product is going to be demanded. So it's the income as well as the wealth. I mean, income or wealth that is available to a household or the individual. And it is also the prices of other products. So when the price of a competing product is high, you would expect that the demand of the good concerned would be higher, because people will move away from a more expensive product into demanding the one that is cheaper. So it determines the price of the product that we're concerned with, okay, the price of the good, and the income of an individual or the household, or wealth, the prices of other goods. So the prices of other goods could be substitutes or they could be complements. In terms of substitutes, which is the example I talked about earlier, say, what would be the two good substitutes? A brand of tea, two brands of tea, Joko and Five Roses, say for instance. For the people who live in South Africa, they would know those two brands very well. So if the price of Joko, which is a substitute for Five Roses, goes up, then the demand for Five Roses would be higher, because the price of the substitute or the competition is higher. In terms of complements, you can imagine that you really like your tea with sugar. So sugar and tea act as complements for each other. Now imagine that the price of sugar goes high to a level that is very difficult for you to afford sugar, but you only like your tea with sugar. Now you can think about what is going to happen to your own demand for tea. It is the price of sugar that has gone high, and you only like your tea with sugar. But what is going to happen to your demand for tea if you can't afford sugar? You would expect the demand for tea to go down. Alright? That is the other factor, the price of other goods. Price of either substitutes or complements. Okay? You have to think about these separately, because they have different effects. But it's not only the prices of the substitutes and complements, it is also your tastes, right? Tastes or preferences. What do you prefer? And preferences change, tastes change. People get to a certain level of income and suddenly they have tastes for different types of products. They may be quality products or they just may be status goods. So, and tastes are often defined or determined by the society in which we live in. So cultural trends. You know, we've got fads, products that come in and out of fashion. So tastes change over time. Okay? In any case, when your taste for a particular product goes up, the demand for that product should go up as well. And we also have expectations, right? What are we expecting? Expectations for the future. What do we expect is going to happen in the future? Our expectations. If we expect that the price of the good that we're concerned with is going to go high, chances are the demand for that good is going to go high as well. You know, we often see this in South Africa in terms of petrol. When there's an announcement that petrol prices are going up the following day, queues for petrol just increase, and the demand to an extent that some garages in fact run out of petrol. So expectations for the future have an effect on what is currently demanded, what amount or quantity of a particular product are being demanded. It can also be our own expectation about what is going to happen to our wealth. If we expect that our own wealth is going to go down, or maybe the following year we're not going to be working, then our demand for particular products are going to drop as well, because of the expectations of what we think is going to happen to our own income. So all of those are expectations for the future. Expectations on what is going to happen to the price of the product, expectation of what is going to happen to our own pockets, our own income. So these factors are all determinants, they all determine demand. Formally, we then say that demand, is a function of these these factors. Demand is a function of price of the good, income, the price of substitutes and complements, tastes, expectations, and holding everything else constant. And really that is our function for demand. But when we present it formally. But what is also important is how changes in each of these factors of demand. How changes on these factors of demand. So demand is a function, price of the good, income, your own personal income, prices of substitutes and complements, your expectations for the future. What else are we living? Your tastes, your own tastes for that particular good. So all of these factors have a different. You'll see later on that a change in the price of a particular good has got a different effect on demand as a function, as opposed to a change in income, a change in those prices, and a change in expectations of the future and tastes. In fact, when the price of the good changes, because we represent the relationship, the demand function as a relationship between this factor, okay, this factor and the quantity demanded, it then happens that a change in this factor will lead to a change along the curve itself. And formally, demand is that relationship, the relationship between the price of the good, and it's a negative relationship between the price of the good and the quantity demanded of that good. So, if this was price, and this was the quantity demanded of the good, the relationship would be such that, and then this is the law of demand, the relationship between that particular factor and the quantity demanded, the units demanded of that good, would be such that we'll have a negative relationship between those two variables. You can think about it as we've also discussed earlier on, that ordinarily you would expect that the quantity, the units of a particular good that you demand would decrease as the price of that particular good increases. Well, also because your income is limited, your budget is limited. And anyway, we represent the demand schedule in terms of price of the good and the quantity demanded of that good. So that particular factor. So a change in this factor would lead to a movement along that particular line or that particular curve. Well, because that's what really that curve represents. It represents changes in price in relation to the quantity demanded. But a change in income has got a different effect on the demand function. If your income increases, like I said earlier, you would expect that demand would increase. And if you listen to me carefully, I say demand. I don't say the quantity demanded. I say the demand itself. So the demand itself for a particular product would increase. That would mean that our demand function is going to shift outward. It's going to increase. So the relationship between the price and the quantity, the relationship itself is going to be bigger. So for instance, while at a particular price, so much quantity was being demanded, at the same price, more quantity is going to be demanded. That makes sense. If your income increases, it should make sense anyway. If your income increases, but the price stays the same, well, you should be demanding more quantities of a particular good. So at each price level, then you have an increase in the quantity demanded. You know, so there's this increase. So it's an increase from there, it's an increase from there, it's an increase all over. So we have a shift outward of the demand curve. And then you can think about how the other effects will themselves affect the demand function. So if this is our demand function, what do you think is going to happen when the prices of competition substitutes, say, increases? Well, like I said, if you love Joko, but the price of, and then the price of 5 roses goes up, well, there's going to be more demand for the good whose price has remained the same. So again, we expect that shift of the demand, the whole demand curve shifts. So more quantities of that good at the same price would be demanded. But if it's the complements whose prices have gone up, then we should expect a negative. If it's the complements, the price of complements that goes up, we should expect demand to go down. So this demand curve is going to shift inward, parallel to itself. Just remember, it's always parallel to itself. You can read more about these particular changes. Shifts outwards, shifts inwards. Some textbooks say shift to the right and shift to the left of the demand curve. And think about what is going to happen to your demand function or your demand schedule when expectations of your income or your income is expected to drop in future. Well, you should expect the demand curve to shrink. But if you're expecting to get a promotion, you're expecting, to win a lotto, you're going to be wealthier tomorrow, and you know that for sure. Well, then the demand for a particular product should be increasing. You're not tightening your belt because you know that in future, so your savings will go down because tomorrow you're going to be rich. Same applies to tastes. When your tastes, preferences for a particular product drop, the demand, the individual demand for that particular product should decrease because your taste for it has decreased. Now, what we're talking about here is individual demand or household demand. Now, how do we measure or how do we determine market demand for a particular product? Well, all we do is add up horizontally. We add up the demands, demand functions for particular products. So if this is individual 1 and this is individual 2, they both have their different demand schedules for the same good. So one might be there and one might be a little bit more flat. But what we do really is add up the quantities. Add up the quantities to get the market demand. So at the same price, we look at what quantity it is here. It may be 2 quantities demanded. Here it may be 10 quantities demanded. And then we should come up here with 12 quantities demanded. So it is a horizontal summation of the individual demand curves that determines the market demand. Essentially, really, that's in a nutshell, that's it about demand. For all the other details, do consult your textbook. And please do go through the exercises that I've included in your slides as well.